This is called a thumbnail. The first picture on your video is what?
Your thumbnail is been great.
Got it?
Good.
Okay. So we're starting. I'll pass this around. This is Gymnostemma. Yep. I'll pass this around too, behind that. Gymnostemma. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about Gymnostemma, or Jiao Gu Lan. We've talked about it some, right? This is just like a mini review. This is what's its energy. This is what makes Gymnostemma unique. A couple of things about it. Its taste, as you'll notice, is, let's do organoleptics. Ready? Smell. What do you smell? What can you smell? Just earthy, a slight alfalfa-like. I like that. Do y'all smell that? So we call this organoleptics. What does organoleptics mean again? It's an important terminology with FDA, right? What does that mean? Sensory assessment of things, right? How do we taste it, smell it, texture it, color it, things we can observe with our senses. But organoleptics also has a lot to do with taste and flavor. Okay, so the organoleptics of this, it is, the aroma is slight hay-like, right? And a little earthy. I always like to comment that it's pretty much mild though, right? Doesn't have any overpowering odor at all. Yeah. You can smell ginsenosides in it though, if you really key your nose to it. Those compounds that are in ginseng, you can smell them in here. It just should trigger your nose. Taste is, what are you saying? What taste do you get? Anybody? Tastes slightly earthy, pleasant, right? I would call this pleasant. Tea-like, that has like a little bit of that green tea, bit of green tea have, but yeah, you can always taste ginsenosides. You get a slight earthy, sweet aftertaste that kicks in. That's the ginsenosides. Those are the compounds similar to what it's ginseng. No, ginsenosides would and or different types of different, but similar adaptogen compounds, but ginsenosides are unique to the ginseng family. So this is why this is unique. It's true botany world. This is not a ginseng family plant, but it's the name. When I was on the mountain, Yellow Mountain in China, this was harvested at. I learned a lot about Jiao Gu Lan that I've never seen written anywhere still. Every gas station, every store, every restaurant, everybody had this. They would actually, this is a grass. That's not, it makes it very unique. Because remember, ginsengs are roots that take sometimes 4, maybe 100 years or more to grow, right? Ginseng can be ancient. And remember, once ginseng grows, everywhere it grows, it takes the nutrients and energy out of the soil. So you can't grow ginseng twice in the same area, ever. So in Chinese medicine, we say it sucks, like it takes on all the energy of the soil out of it. So you never will have energy again. What's unique, but that's also very expensive, takes a long time to harvest it. It's not very sustainable, right? It's very expensive and all those things, right? Jiao Gu Lan is just a grass. Grass like looks kind of like a grass one. When I bought it on Yellow Mountain, it just looks like little balls, like someone took grass and just tied them into like little little green balls about the size of a sugar cube. And you just buy like a whole jar of it and you just drink this all day long. So it's often called ginseng grass, but it is the only plant outside of the actual ginseng herbs where we find these ginsenosides, which have very powerful adaptogenic properties. So that makes it unique, number one. So this would be, and like if we were practicing ecological herbal medicine, this is very ecologically friendly. You can also grow this in America. I don't know if you can grow it in Nebraska. Maybe Shay will try to grow some for us, but I've only seen it in the mountains in China. So it makes it unique. It is very sustainable. It also makes it very cheap compared to ginseng, right? It's, you know, this is probably like $10 a pound, maybe 20 for like organic, really good grade, where ginseng is, you know, it's approaching $1,000 a pound or more right now. So here we're talking about affordability, sustainability, a lot of things with Jiao Gu Lan that are really impressive. So the Latin name would be Gymnostemma, which is what we often just call this in America. The Chinese name is Jiao Gu Lan, Jiao. Second word is Gu, Gu. Third word is Lan, Lan. Jiao Gu Lan, ginseng grass. Okay. So what is also unique about this adaptogen that's pretty rare, but not completely unique, is its energy, its thermodynamic is it's cold, slightly bitter, but it has a little bit of a sweet flavor. Okay. Why does that combination really excite us as practitioners? What do you think? Bitter usually tells us it's cold, right? Bitter also usually tells us probably good for digestion, which we'll get to later. It is, in a way. Sweet usually means in nature adaptogen, but we love the combination of bitter and sweet because we never want too much bitter and we usually don't want too much sweet in herbal medicine because that's too many extremes, right? So this is like a really good balance. What this means on a clinical level is this herb is pretty mild and it's pretty well tolerated by about everybody. I've never seen anybody have a bad reaction to this plant. We're knock on wood with that. So what I like about this plant too is it does this. This is a unique property of being both bitter and a little bit sweet. And again, it's slightly bitter and slightly sweet. Okay. When we formulate with this, this gives us a lot of possibilities, but this just tells us that it's really very balanced plant. What's the, just to review, what is the property of Chinese ginseng has what thermodynamic nature? It's all out hot, right? Very hot. American ginseng is unique in that it's what? Very cold. Very cold. Yeah, but it's extremely sweet and a little bit bitter. So the American ginseng being extremely sweet mean it can sometimes make us feel like a little full or bloated when we take it. We do not get that with Gymnostemma. So this is sometimes called poor man's ginseng because you can get the same effects at a fraction of the cost. It has a lot of, it doesn't have all the same benefits of ginseng, but when we're talking about energy and vitality, it's Remember on the scale of 1 to 10 with adaptogens when we talked about them, Gymnostemma is about a 6. But it also has other properties that make it unique amongst adaptogens and different than ginsengs. One of those applications is because it's bitter, we also know it enters what organ system. This is a good review, right? The pharmacology of taste. If something is bitter, we think about the liver with digestion, but what other organ does it enter? The heart. So this is a kind of an interesting one, right? So Gymnostemma, one of its main research uses and traditional uses is it strengthens the heart. Okay. But get this, unlike Chinese ginseng, which elevates blood pressure, Gymnostemma can actually lower blood pressure, which means we can give it in really high doses and we don't have to worry about it like hyperstimulating somebody. Is that cool? That's pretty unique. This also means for people that are really sensitive, like people that have MTHFR, genetic mutation, or people that are just sensitive to ginseng or stimulants, we can give it to them in a really high amount without having to worry about it being too stimulating. So this is often like a really good, what I call testing adaptogen, meaning an adrenal herb we can start with someone if they're on a bunch of medications and if they're on a bunch of like blood pressure, heart medications where you might not want to give them something really strong. It has no known interactions that we know of. Okay. So no known drug interactions at this time. Okay. So it actually lowers blood pressure, and guess what else? It lowers cholesterol, which is kind of unique. Not many other adaptogens. I can't think of any other adaptogen that lowers cholesterol. So this is pretty unique. So it lowers blood pressure, lowers cholesterol. Directionality is going to be inward. We look at the 4 directions. Here we're talking about inward. Okay.
So if you're using it to lower cholesterol, what's the timetable we're looking at? You take a normal dose, you're looking at like 2 weeks, 2 months, a year.
Yeah, anytime we're talking about cholesterol, we're talking like at least 3 months to really wait to get a blood test. It's not really worth it to usually get tested at least 2 months to see any kind of change. Yeah. Is this really strong for cholesterol lowering? Not super strong. You know, it's going to lower cholesterol like probably 5 to 15 points, but it still lowers cholesterol. But what's also unique about it, because it's cold, what does a cold type herb do to review to our body? What type of effects does it have that we really like for helping diseases? Remember, when we see cold, we immediately usually know anti-inflammatory. So this herb has been researched a lot with inflammation. Not so much like Advil inflammation, but here we're talking about the type of inflammation that can trigger our immune system to react and like intensify fibromyalgia and autoimmune conditions. In anti-inflammatory, it has been shown to help like atherosclerosis, the hardening of the arteries from inflammation in the blood vessel system. So this would be more for like systemic inflammation, inflammation with autoimmune patterns, inflammation with any kind of chronic fatigue syndrome, inflammation with immune problems. Okay. But don't really think of it as something that's for arthritis necessarily. This would be more like deep inflammation. Okay. Because it's cold, bitter, and sweet, This herb is also traditionally, and this is not in textbooks, but I learned this in China. This is an herb we use to help prevent summer heat. Remember, we talked about summer heat. It helps cool your body temperature. It helps to regulate people that are working outside in the heat, exposed to the sun, dehydration, heat stroke, heat exhaustion, people that have to train outside, people that are just going to be exposed to heat, right? I don't know how well it treats summer heat versus like what maybe yarrow or peppermint or some of those things would do that we've talked about, but it's used a lot preventatively. So this is actually also known, when I was in China, they called this summer ginseng, meaning when when you're trying to do adaptogens for all your life to reduce the effects of aging and stress and build your energy, this is the adaptogen we do in summer. What other adaptogens that have a cool property would we also maybe use in summer with this or in place of it that are cooling? There's only a couple. Yarrow would be a great herb for summer heat, but not an adaptogen though. We would combine yarrow with this possibly, for sure. American ginseng, there's only one other one. Okay, maybe three other ones. Ashwagandha, I think is cool. Some textbooks say it's a little bit warm, but I think it has an overall cooling effect. The other one is reishi mushroom. So those are like the 4 adaptogens that we do as part of the summer cleanse, or if you want to rejuvenate in summer and keep going on your adrenal anti-aging restoration program, or just to get more vitality, these are the ones that are best in summer, especially for people who are really irritated by summer heat and having a hard time with it. Okay. Because it is an adaptogen, and because it also is anti-inflammatory and clears summer heat, this is also one of our main herbs that we give during chemotherapy or radiation treatments. What's really cool about this one is it's not known to interact with any known chemotherapy or immune therapy or radiation therapy, meaning we can freely give it to anybody for any kind of cancer treatment, during, before, or after. It's pretty exciting. I use this a lot more for people with chemo or radiation who are just fatigued, lethargic, brain fog, just the classic fatigue parts of chemo and radiation. It seems to help blood counts a lot, but I don't know that it's as strong as some other adaptogens, but it does help keep blood counts, like white blood cell counts and red blood cell counts and platelets. It can help them when they're lowered. Okay. Okay. What's unique about this as an adaptogen that's kind of unique is, again, because it's cold, slightly bitter, slightly sweet, we know this really has some kind of affinity to the stomach. So this herb has been researched a lot in Asia and used a lot in hospitals to treat ulcers, the after effects of ulcers, and gastritis. So gastritis, remember, is a general term we use for when usually the stomach or your digestive tract is inflamed. So this would be good for leaky gut syndrome, people that have ulcers, diverticulitis, people that have, having acid reflux and indigestion. Now, it doesn't really treat like acid reflux or indigestion, but it helps the inflammation that's going on in the digestive tract. So I want to make that point. This does not treat like nausea with chemotherapy. It doesn't treat like the acid part of reflux, but it does help to get inflammation out of your gut. Okay. Yeah.
would it help like people have, hiatal hernia, which
This, no, hiatal hernia is really unique. If they had like ulcerations with that, we would use it. But with hiatal hernia, we do more carminatives like wild yam and catnip. Those work really well for that. The holy trinity for hiatal hernia is catnip. Just forgot it. Wild yam. Sometimes we do hawthornberry also for hiatal hernia. Occasionally we'll do black haw bark too, but those catnip, sometimes chamomile will be helpful too. We also have to remember with a hiatal hernia that sometimes peppermint can sometimes make worse for people. Certain people, other people it may be super helpful for. Okay, so we can use this for some digestive inflammation. We've got the cancer chemotherapy. Getting back to the cancer, I don't necessarily use it this way, but it makes me feel reassured knowing that there is a lot of research out of Asia the last 10 years that Jiao Gu Lan has a lot of anti-tumor and anti-cancer properties, which is why it also ends up in a lot of formulas in patients that I have that are undergoing chemo or radiation. So this is going to be one of those herbs we're going to really like for people who are in terminal cancer or end stage cancer or stage 4, where the treatments are heavy, the probability of success is really low. And we're just going to throw some really intense things to help the person as much as we can. Yeah.
Going back to the digestive inflammation, would it be helpful for someone that is recovering from bulimia that's having a lot of digestive inflammation? Would that not apply?
I haven't used it for like eating disorder recovery, but it would be something to consider. We always do bitters for eating disorder recovery and carminatives. That's our first start. We do American ginseng as an adaptogen and licorice for eating disorders. I don't know. I haven't used it this way. If anybody finds it's helpful, let me know. To me, it's like not sweet enough to sometimes do that. It's like a lot of times of eating disorder, the stomach, the energy of the stomach, digestion has been so depleted to such an extreme degree. We have to like tonify it, like with American ginseng or licorice, and then we have to like do the bitters to like stimulate motility again. Right. And then what always happens after eating disorders is that their digestion has to almost like it went offline, and it has to remember how to digest. So we often do carminatives to help that bloating that always happens after eating disorders, because people have, either restricted so much or change their diet so much that just anytime they eat, they feel bloated, and then that makes them feel uncomfortable, and that can create like a spiral effect of like getting out of recovery and relapsing. So, make sense? Okay. 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 So what is really also a little bit unique, but not totally unique, is as an adaptogen, we said this herb is energizing, but it never overstimulates. We can even use it on very sensitive people who get overstimulated by other adaptogens. It's very cheap, very affordable, somewhat not super easy to find in America. It also makes a really pleasant tea, unlike ginseng, which is a root that we have to decoct and cook for like an hour or half hour. This is just, you can just infuse this, right? It's just a herb. So we don't have to cook it for long periods of time. We don't have to do some of those things. It is a viney grass-like thing, yes. Yeah. Yeah. It is like an herb, or yeah, it is a grass-like viney thing that kind of crawls and creeps. But they call it ginseng grass. But so what's unique about this as an adaptogen is that we can give mega doses and help people that are very sensitive to being overstimulated. It's very safe. We don't have to worry about that. Some of the adaptogens like ginseng are so energizing, they can also make people feel really bloated and full. We've talked about that, right? That's why a lot of ginseng formulas traditionally have like some digestive herbs like ginger with them or something to make you feel less bloated. We don't have to worry about that with Jiao Gu Lan at all. Okay. What's really nice about it too is that it also can sometimes create a feeling of euphoria when you take this herb. Ginseng can do that. Any adaptogen can do that, but Jiao Gu Lan is kind of known for doing that a little bit. So what we mean is that if people are going to take this for fatigue or adrenal fatigue or chronic fatigue, there's benefits other than just the adrenals restoring that you can get from this. It kind of has like a little bit of a euphoria type buzz you get from it. Okay. The other thing that's unique somewhat about this herb is it has been researched to have some true anti-aging properties. True anti-aging properties. It has been shown to in animal studies to increase lifespan. One of the few plants that's been actually shown to do that. This is a traditional longevity tonic, which brings us back to a little bit of Chinese medicine basics. What does that mean that this plant does to our body that's unique? What part of our body does it stimulate also? It does stimulate qi, but what else? Jing. This is actually a Jing tonic like Hoshu Wu. So Hoshu Wu would be the only other like true research anti-aging or historic herbs. All adaptogens have anti-aging properties in general, right? But Hoshu Wu and Jiao Gu Lan or Gymnostemma have both been shown historically through hundreds of years of Chinese medicine wisdom and also through research to have like an anti-aging effect. Interesting is that Hoshu Wu also lowers cholesterol. Jiao Gu Lan does not have any effect on hair growth or hair thinning like Hoshu Wu does, though. Remember, Hoshu Wu really targets the kidneys and adrenals a little differently. This is a little different, Jiao Gu Lan. So Prairie Star and the prototype, the anti-aging formula we had, this is like really one of the main ingredients. So I don't think they still haven't made that yet, have they? It's a really cool formula. Okay. It is historically really prized by martial artists and also a lot of for its anti-aging longevity effects. We haven't really talked about it a lot, but in Asia, there's this whole what we call the monastic herbal medicine. And there's also like monastic culinary food medicine, meaning over hundreds and thousands of years of trial and error, there's certain ways they will cook in a monastery type setting to help people cultivate their training. In the martial arts historical communities, this herb is used a lot to increase like your ability to train, recover from workouts like we would use an adaptogen, but most importantly for anti-aging and rejuvenation. Okay, so I think it's actually a true Jing tonic to some degree. for sure. Okay. That's about all that I personally know about it. For being such a really powerful and accessible Chinese herb, it's really not super popular in America. It's a lot of Chinese textbooks written in English don't have it, but in Asia it's widely used and common. I said there are some companies in America that make it. It works any way you want to take it. The tea is great, pretty pleasant. The tincture is good, capsules are good, everything, any way you take this plant is good. Okay. Has anybody gotten any kind of effect from it that you want to mention? You definitely feel it go to the stomach a little bit, that's for sure. Anything else? Did you pick up little quirky things? No?
But that's what I thought, that's truly relaxed, so I don't know if it's just like.
There's some research that it's a little relaxing. It's never been used that way historically. Yeah. So it might be maybe might be a little bit of like a ashwagandha, type effect, that something about it we don't quite understand yet. It's definitely grounding though, right? It's definitely, when you take ginseng, you instantly feel like kind of stimulated and you can feel your heart kind of activate. Definitely don't feel that with Jiao Gu Lan. Yeah, mostly inward, but inward can be grounding in itself too, though. A feeling of groundedness. Okay. So this is an herb I use a lot. It's Prairie Star makes it for us. Otherwise, it's actually not that common to find a tincture of it. There's a couple, 1 or 2 companies that make like a pill of it, but it's not super common. Okay. No other questions on Jiao Gu Lan? Not to be confused with what other herbs sound like that or look like that. Not to be confused with Gymnostemma sylvestre that we use for blood sugar regulation and diabetes, right? It does. I mean, you can actually, Gymnostemma does that weird thing where if you do get it on your tongue, at least before you eat something sweet, you can't taste the sweet. Yeah, true story. Yeah, the only problem is you have to take it like every time before you eat something sweet, though. It works best as a tea for that because it coats your tongue. Yeah, actually, so we're not talking about Jiao Gu Lan right now. We're talking about the blood sugar herb, Gymnostemma sylvestre. It's actually, that herb is actually used in neurobiology classes to show how the sensation and of like taste and flavor in the brain can be affected by medicines. So it's used a lot in neurobiology classes even to teach. It works that well. Okay. All right. So that's a wrap.